Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Dr. Bonnie Wims. Bonnie, hello.
Hello, Mindy. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I wanted all the listeners to hear about you and what you're up to in the world because you're doing really important work. So please explain, what are you doing and what do you love about it?
Yeah, so I'm a counseling psychologist by training. I was trained in London, England. That's sort of where I think I left my heart. But it's fine. I can go there again someday soon, right? So yeah, I'm a counseling psychologist, kind of started out standard run-of-the-mill bricks and mortar office in London. And then when I left Boston, I left London to come back to Boston. I was asked by a few clients to work online with them. And fast forward now 9 years, and I've been working virtually with clients that whole time. And it has really something I fell into by request, but now that I'm doing it full time, I feel so excited about it because I feel like it's offering people virtual therapy that's much more of a convenience, so people can see a therapist and not have to worry about office hours and those sort of things. So I'm much more flexible. So it's just kind of fallen into it, but love it. Absolutely love it.
You do have office hours, though. I mean, you're not agreeing to talk to people at 3 a.m. and things like that, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I do have office hours, but much more flexible due to the fact that I'm not having to make my way into an office and neither are my clients. So that way it's much more flexible. But I do offer evenings and weekends, and coveted Sunday appointments for people with the therapist, I think is kind of unheard of. So yeah, I do offer more flexible hours.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously you're not going to talk about any clients, but what are the kinds of things people come to you for?
I think, all sorts of things. Obviously, there's kind of the standard run-of-the-mill anxiety and depression. Don't want to say it like that. It's not run-of-the-mill ever. But that is a real common sort of complaint that people will come to me with. But I think where I work the most effectively is with people who are finding themselves sort of at a crossroads. They're stuck. They might feel really successful at work, but some challenges in their personal life, or vice versa, where it just feels like things just aren't quite syncing up, and maybe some old mindset and thought patterns are getting in their way, and a way to kind of really become more aware of how they think, confidence, what their ideas are about themselves, and maybe get in there and kind of tinker with some of those old habitual ways that they have of talking to themselves, that aren't helpful.
Yeah, I can imagine anybody talking to themselves. Apparently we all do it, right?
Oh, we do it. We do it all day long. Yeah. And when I ask people to sort of become aware of it, sometimes it's quite shocking how negative or at the least challenging we are to ourselves, so that we reinforce insecurity and lack of confidence through our own, self-dialogue.
Sure. So thoughtful leadership is all about taking a step back and reflection, and that's what you're talking about. Where do you feel, this is a very big question, I know you can handle it, where do you feel that people in general could be more thoughtful?
I think it's sort of been a bit of my soapbox lately is there is a lot of information out there about mental health awareness. And I think this past year has been particularly difficult for people in a lot of different ways. So companies and governments and everywhere you see all of this information about taking care of yourself, making sure you're aware of your mental health and just really being kind to yourself and taking care. The problem I have with what clients express to me is sort of when the rubber hits the road, is that there's a lot of talk, but there's not always a lot of support. And so thoughtful leadership to me, it comes in obviously from CEOs, but all the way down, any mid-level management, any supervisor, anyone that's working with somebody that's expressing that they're struggling. There is a real lack of thoughtful leadership around people responding to those employees or people who are saying, hey, I think I'm really struggling here. What can I do? And support in the workplace, support where people are saying, absolutely, if you're being brave enough to step forward and express that you're struggling, we want to listen and we want to give you the support that you need. And unfortunately, sometimes the PR campaign doesn't always match up with the actual support within companies, and not even just companies, friends, families, colleagues. I think a lot of people don't know how to listen and just be there when people are expressing that they're struggling. We can all say, oh, of course, mental health, take care of yourself. But when it really comes down to those conversations and listening to someone who's expressing, that they're struggling, sometimes we fall short.
So I'm going to pick up on this idea of the friends and family, because it's all very well if somebody knows that they're having a big challenge and they agree to go to a counselor or psychologist like yourself. That's fine. They're signing up for that kind of professional help. But friends and family are not trained. So how would most of the people listening to us are just normal people, not professionals in this area. So seriously, Bonnie, how would you suggest we act or react when somebody comes to us who's close to us and they're struggling?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. I was getting my hair done yesterday and my stylist said something about my advice, asking for my advice, and that she talks to a lot of people who are thinking about going to therapy for advice. And so I think that's the key thing. First of all, I don't give advice because you know yourself so much better than I do. But I think when people express that they're feeling unwell, depression, anxiety, or just not feeling that their mental health as good as it could be right now, I think when people start to express that, a lot of us shut down out of fear. We get worried that we don't know what to say. We get worried that we're not going to say the right thing. We get worried that we're not a professional. Whereas really what people need is someone to listen and just give a compassionate word, compassionate ear. Empathy goes a really long way to validating somebody's concerns. And so if someone would come to you or call you or express to you that they think maybe they're struggling, listening to them, allowing them to express that, and then providing just the support to say, this sounds really hard. It sounds really, really hard. And I'm so sorry you're going through that. It's not magic. It's validating. It's listening. It's being open to the idea that somebody is struggling and not getting worried that somehow you now have to fix that,
Yeah, thank you very much, because that's nice and specific. So to listen, to be there, provide the empathy, validating them as a person and what they're saying. And that sounds really hard. I'm sorry you have to go through that. I think that's what you said. That's a great phrase. So that could help a lot of people. I hope people listening to us. Try it out, guys. The next time you don't know what to say, just say that. In the right circumstances.
Yeah.
So, Bonnie, how on earth did you get to this place from where you started? Because I know this is not what you originally trained for in your 20s, is it?
No, I had a whole prior career. maybe like a lot of people, fell into a career was never my intention, was never a goal. I always knew I wanted to be a psychologist from way, 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 into probably middle school, high school, where I took a course and just fell in love with the idea of trying to understand, our behavior. But, real life happened, and I took a job, and I was working in group health insurance for 15, 20 years. You get promoted and you have children and you have bills and you got to eat and you got to pay the mortgage. And so it just sort of fell into that. And then wasn't able to really go back and get my degree until my 40s. This is a tale for anyone who thinks it's too late. It's never too late. Went back and got my education and my doctorate in my 40s, and just maybe in some ways appreciated it more, because it was hard fought for, and it never left my mind, but it took a while to circle back and get to that place.
Sure. Well, that is great. It's never too late. I agree with that as well. I've got plenty of plans for the next 50 years of my life, 50 plus, I should say. And there's so much that we can do. It's just we're conditioned to think that I've been trained for this, and therefore this is the only thing I can do, or, I'm too old to learn X, Y, Z. But we're not, are we?
Yeah. No, we're not. No, we're not. Absolutely not. In fact, I'm grateful for those years, working in the insurance company, because I think it gave me a lot of skills that I apply now. Not to be a psychologist, certainly, but just so many, dealing with difficult people, writing performance appraisals, running teams, working in a team, all of these, building budgets. And because there's a business side to what I do too. So I just feel like it gave me some balance and perspective that maybe I wouldn't have had if I'd gone straight into being a therapist in my 20s. Who knows? But there was a while there I resented it, because I felt like it took me so long to get to this place of doing what I so much love, that I feel is more of a vocation for me. But now it's more like, oh, okay, no, I learned things during those other years. I learned different skills, and I apply them now in a way that's really helpful to me and my business, and all sorts of ideas around that. So using that is just sort of a jump start to getting to finally be a psychologist, which was my dream. But yeah, I just feel like there's good experience that I bring to my current role from that past, experiences.
Yeah, it's never a waste, and we can always make a connection. And anyway, there's no point looking back. So after all is said and done, all is said and done. So move on. What I would love for you to talk about, if you're willing, is an area where you feel you've made a mistake or an error of judgment. I ask all my guests this. Some can't think of any because they're perfect. But you sound very close to perfect. I'm sure the listeners would agree. However, is there something that you did or didn't do that you really feel was a mistake?
Well, yeah, I got a pretty long list running through my brain right now. Certainly not perfect at all. I think one of the more recent ones, which I guess, I don't know if it's a mistake or just I didn't do it initially, is I didn't, for my business and for my marketing, I didn't get into social media. I just was very, very reluctant, probably because of my age, probably because of my lack of experience with it. It was very intimidating to me. And it was also something that I just didn't think of as appropriate for me at the time when I first started my business. So yeah, years and years of just really not tapping into it the way that I think I could have. And not so much to get clients, but just back to my sort of soapbox of wanting to kind of open up the door to therapy and have people see what goes on behind this closed door, this mystique of therapy. I really want to normalize that and have people understand that it's not a mystery, it's not magic, and it certainly shouldn't be this thing shrouded in secrecy. So I love and try now to use social media in that way. But I do think that I was kind of behind in getting into it. And I'm certainly still so far from being an expert at it, because it's, like I said, it's just not my go to. I wasn't raised with it, like our kids. So yeah, a mistake, I think, but it turned out okay because I use it now. I definitely try to use it to project a message out there to try to help people.
Yeah, I've seen some of your stuff, so that's good. And I think after this, when people look at the show notes and they look you up and follow you and everything, then they'll be seeing your stuff. No pressure, of course. So we love putting our guests in the spotlight or rabbit in the headlights. So one of the other things that I like asking people, and I know you're prepared for this question, is there a misconception that people tend to have about you? They think one thing about you, and actually that's not true. In fact, it could be the opposite. Tell me.
That was such a good question. I really want to applaud that question. These are all very thought-provoking questions, but that one never been asked that ever. And of course, I bet all of us have an answer for that. And yes, I think I'm a listener by trade, and I'm a listener by, I've always been somebody that really enjoys listening, hearing people's stories. I'm a curious person. But I think as a result of that, the biggest misconception is that I don't have an opinion and I don't have something to say. So I get caught up in these situations where, especially meeting new people, where they find out what I do for a profession, and dinner becomes sort of a mini therapy session. And there's, a real lopsided question and answer thing where I end up sort of, asking the questions and hearing about things. And I think people just think, oh, well, she likes to listen. She doesn't have much to say on her own or doesn't have an opinion about things. And so my default is listening. And so I think, and that's probably on me. I probably need to speak up a little bit more. But yeah, I think people just think maybe sometimes I don't have a lot to say on my own, or that I have a strong opinion. And that is not right. I have very strong opinions and I have lots to say, and I would love to say it. It's just a matter of an equal relationship, Yeah,
well, you are saying it. You're on this podcast. I know you've done other podcasts with us and others, and I know you are a co-author in a book that just came out recently. So that is definitely putting your stake in the ground and putting your opinions out there. Congratulations on that as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that is just part of the journey. I mean, people always think it's black and white, on and off. You're either out there talking all the time, spouting off your opinions, even when people don't want to hear them, or in the background not saying anything. And that there's a spectrum, and at certain times as well, it's more appropriate to share your opinions, more appropriate than other times. And I'm sure that's what you've realized. So just because we have social media, it doesn't mean that we should be, yakking all the time. And some people do. And that's why the thoughtful leadership methodology exists. It's about putting more thought into what people are calling thought leadership. It's not about being very vocal without thinking about what you're saying. It's about putting the thought in, saying the right things, and it might not be that much. So thank you very much for being an exemplar of that type of communication. And we just have time for probably one more question. So this is another macro big question. What problem in the world do you feel could be solved with more thoughtful leadership?
It's going to be a bit more of the same drum I bang, I'm afraid. But mental health, mental wellness, I think it's so far from really being addressed in a truthful and honest way. We've made some major leaps and bounds, and the more we talk about it, the more people are exposed to it, the more people are open and honest about their own struggles when they feel comfortable. I think some celebrities and sports celebrities are doing that now, and I really applaud that. But I do think that we are still light years away from it being something that people are comfortable chatting about in a way that can help the stigma of it's enough to struggle with it, But then if you feel like you can't tell people, you can't talk about it, you can't tell your boss, you can't tell your spouse. So we just need a lot more thoughtful leadership and people being willing to listen, to not feel like they have to fix it right away, but just be open to letting people talk about it and letting people feel that there's nothing wrong here, that I'm just expressing something that a good many of us struggle with,
Creating the environment, creating the space, holding the space, is all these wonderful phrases. And as you were talking, I realized I used the word normal before. I said, normal people, and I laughed. But even watching our language, because that's not very clever. What is normal anyway? We could probably have another hour on that, but we don't have time. So next time for sure, normal people will be the name of that episode. Dr. Bonnie Wims, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And I am so grateful that you chose to come on our show.
Thank you for having me. It's always love talking about this topic. And I really love your idea, the thoughtful leadership. I love that. And I think, I wish you well. And I hope that it spreads large and wide.
Yeah, well, I wish all the listeners well also, because they're the ones who are helping us spread the message. So thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, listeners. And we'll see you again soon. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader. And I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.